Hello. Welcome to the Pop Astrology Podcast. My name is Jessie Peterson, and it has been a while. I haven't recorded a podcast episode this year, which is a little crazy of me because I only posted 2 podcast episodes since I started this, and then I took a 3-month hiatus. But I was traveling. I was in New York City visiting my best friend for New Year's and her birthday, and then I got home, and the next day was the fires, and I had to evacuate my house for a week, and I have 2 cats, and it was really stressful, and I brought them to my friend's house, and he has 3 cats, and we kept being worried that we were going to the fire was going to come to his house in Glendale, and then we were going to have to move around with 5 cats, and that no one would be able to take us in with 5 cats. It was a very stressful time. Anyway, that accounts for my absence through January 18th, and nothing accounts for it after then except the fact that there was the inauguration and everything went to hell. Which brings me to my first topic, actually. Today we're going to talk about all of the Mars signs. So Mars in all of the signs, Aries through Pisces, as well as Mars through all the houses, first house through 12th house. So whatever Mars sign and house you have, we're going to cover it today using celebrities as fun examples. But more specifically, especially with Mars, whatever Mars sign your lover or your crush or your evil coworker that you despise or your nemesis has, we're going to cover what that means and how to fight with them and how to avoid losing a fight with them, which is sort of more important. But before we get to that, we're having girl talk because I just need it. I've been having a lot of trouble putting myself out there, and it's for such a confluence of reasons, but I have a lot of online bullying trauma, and I'm working through that now in EMDR therapy, and it's a tough world out there. I have a lot of struggles with how much I've been objectified by men in my lifetime, especially now that I know I'm a lesbian, and I have a lot of struggles with just over explaining myself and feeling like I have to explain myself. It's hard for me to be I'm a lesbian and then start talking about my ex-boyfriend who I lived with 6 months ago. But that is just my story, and I don't really need to over-explain it to anyone. And I've been having a really hard time understanding that I don't really owe anyone an explanation. And this is where I will say Gabby Windey is my hero. Gabby's podcast, I've been binging for the past couple of weeks. Obviously, I loved her on The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. Watched her on Dancing with the Stars and on Traitors, and she's just everything to me. And I know this is not an unpopular opinion. She's everything to everyone, but the way that she is able to talk about her depression and talk about her trauma and have it be fun and lighthearted is really inspirational to me, because I feel like that's what I have tried to do for a long time. But people don't when, in general, people have not enjoyed when I talk about my trauma and laugh at the same time. But people also don't like when I talk about my trauma and am serious. They're no one likes someone who plays the victim. Yet at the same time, why are you laughing about that? That's serious. What can a girl do? I will never win. I have been a people pleaser literally my whole entire life because my dad is so scary, and I had to figure out, how when he was yelling or when he was being mean, what I could say to him to make him calm down, or what I could say to him in the first place to avoid him blowing up anyway. And now I'm 31 years old and I still am scared of everything, and it sucks because I don't like these people. There's so many people that I people please, but I don't like them in the first place. So why do I even care what they think about me? It's because it's an ingrained habit, as it turns out. I'm processing my trauma in EMDR therapy. I've pretty much cut myself off from the world. I deleted Instagram the night before inauguration, the same time that TikTok was banned. And I deleted TikTok as well. And then I never got back on TikTok after that stupid little stunt they pulled where they were like, oh, thank you, President Trump, for allowing TikTok to continue operating. No, absolutely fuck that. Little publicity stunt, downtime 2 hours. I'm not here for it. And Instagram, I really fucking hate Mark Zuckerberg. I've just hated being perceived. I don't know. I struggle a lot with really getting my astrology business started and posting about it, and knowing that so many people, and specifically men, care way more about my appearance than they care about my work and my intelligence and my passions, and that anything I post, a lot of people would not give a fuck and would care a lot more if I just posted a picture of myself in a bathing suit. So yeah, it's been hard for me to post, so I just haven't. I've just deleted the apps and removed myself from that world. And maybe I'll be back. I'll probably be back, but it won't be for a while. However, I've been working on my ass a lot. Speaking of being objectified, I'm allowed to objectify myself. Also, lesbians can objectify me as well. I've been working on my ass a lot in these times that I haven't had Instagram. I'm going to Coachella. So if you're there, you'll be able to see my ass. But if you're not, you won't, because I don't have Instagram. There's no ass pictures, just live at Coachella. But if you see me, look at the badonkadonk, because she is donk, but badonkadonkin. Okay, I think that's all I had. And we can talk about Mars. Let's begin. Mars, the 6th planet in your big 6. The mother in My Very Educated Mother Just Served Us 9 Pickles, aka our solar system. Mars, the planet one further from the sun than Earth, is astrologically the planet of aggression and your drive and your fire. Mars is a masculine planet. It has hot and dry energy, and it rules the cardinal fire sign, Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, and it's also the traditional ruler of the sign of Scorpio, which is the fieriest of the water signs and a fixed sign. Mars is also exalted in the sign of Capricorn, because Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn, has a lot of structure. Capricorn, the fieriest of the earth signs, has a lot of structure for all of Mars's like uncharted raw power and energy to like be molded and shaped so that it can be used successfully. So if you have Mars in Aries or Scorpio, that's called having Mars in domicile. And the opposite signs of those, so opposite of Aries is Libra and opposite of Scorpio is Taurus. If you have Mars in Taurus or Libra, I have Mars in Libra, then your Mars is in detriment. And this is not like good placement, bad placement, because Mars in domicile is really like naive. Like it sort of just assumes that it's going to be able to win fights because it's like, I'm at home, I have the home field advantage, like I don't even have to try that hard, I'll win anyway. And Mars in detriment is like, oh, I have to be a little bit creative about how I fight, but I'm still have a good chance to win if I use my smarts. So not good placement, bad placement, although sometimes having Mars in Libra does feel like quite a bad placement, but we'll get there. Exaltation works a little bit differently. Every planet has a sign where it's exalted. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and the opposite sign of Capricorn is Cancer, and it's considered in its fall in Cancer. So exaltation is like a throne, and fall is like jail. So this is like a good, bad scenario. Having an exalted Mars in Capricorn is like, I am the king of the world. I can do literally anything. Timothée Chalamet is our example for this one. He is the king of the world. What can we say? And then opposite that is Mars in Cancer. We'll get into the nitty-gritty details of this, but Mars in Cancer is just not a fun placement to have. Coincidentally, Mars has actually been in Cancer since like November of last year and will continue to be there for another month. So life has been really great. Mars takes about 2 years to go through all of the signs. So it's not like Mercury has to be within one sign of your sun sign. Venus has to be within 2 signs. Mars can be anywhere. Sometimes it's close to your sun sign if it's one of those years where it's there, but sometimes it's fucking far away in Cancer for 6 months. All of these babies who have been born with Mars in Cancer over the past 6 months, terrifying. Also, every 24 to 26 months, Mars stations retrograde for about 6 weeks, which is what we've had happening from December 6th to February 23rd in the beginning of Leo and most of Cancer. And so when Mars is retrograde, it really feels like you can't do anything. It's like, since Mars is action, when it goes retrograde, it's just like nothing can happen. It's asking you to look back at your life and the things that you've done in whatever area of your chart it's in. And Mars is a knife. That's like its symbolism. When Mars goes retrograde, it's asking you both to look back at the things that you've done. It's saying you cannot move forward. It's saying look back at what you've done and take this knife and cut away all the things that no longer serve you. And unfortunately, astrology really rewards people who do what it say. So if you do cut away the things that it wants you to cut away, then like you'll be rewarded, even though change is hard. I don't know. And so let's dive in. The first example we have for Aries Mars is Kacey Musgraves. Kacey Musgraves is a Taurus rising, so Mars is in her 12th house, which is interesting because Aries Mars is Mars in domicile, as I mentioned, but 12th house Mars is like not a place that Mars loves to be. You're behind the scenes. It's jail, it's illness, it's hidden enemies, it's things that aren't seen. But Mars is so aggressive and passionate, and especially Mars in its home sign, it's like, I want to do things, I want to work. And so poor Kacey Musgraves and everyone else who has Mars in the 12th house in Aries, it's just like you have such an intense inner world and no one can see it because especially as a Taurus rising, like you're just vibing all the time. People who have Mars in Aries are enthusiastic, they're high energy, and they know what they want. They're direct and they cut to the chase. They have the potential to be impressive athletes. They need to be aware of being impulsive, domineering, and tactless. They need to develop humility, restraint, and mindfulness to avoid unnecessary conflict and confrontation. Mars also tells you how you fight. So as we're going through each of these signs, I'm going to tell you how that person fights and, how to engage or not engage with them so that you don't lose that fight. So people with Mars and Aries play chicken. They want to stand there as long as possible. They want to staring contest you down. They want to make you blink first. They want to make you think that they've got all of this arsenal and all of this energy and they're going to win if you actually challenge them so that you back down before the fight even starts. Because if you let the fight start, they're going to lose because they don't have that. It's all bravado. It's all a front. They don't have the actual energy and drive to fight with you and win. They're just hoping that they can avoid a fight altogether by, threatening you and hoping that you'll step down because they're so intimidating. Don't be intimidated. Don't let them front like that. Win the game of chicken and you will win the fight. Kacey Musgraves specifically with Mars in domicile, I think is really great because Kacey's been an outspoken voice for LGBTQ rights, for abortion rights, for women's rights, against Trump in general, which is very rare in country music circles and has certainly got her banned from airtime on certain radio stations, but she never backs down. I saw her at Lollapalooza, I saw her at Austin City Limits, and I saw her at the Forum this year. And every single show I've been to of hers, she takes a minute and we manifest together. She talks about abortion rights and women's rights. She is never backing down. And I love that about her. And that's a great example of Mars and Aries being used for a good thing. Mars and Aries obviously can also be used for evil. Because Mars is in her 12th house, it is a little bit harder to tell how this plays out in her life because these are things we can't see. It's not really things that she is writing songs about or things that she is talking about in interviews. It's the behind the scenes, it's the subconscious, it's her shadow side. But if you have a 12th house Mars, you might feel like there's a big part of yourself that you can't show the world, including your anger. People with 12th house Mars also sometimes have done unspeakable things or not even terrible unspeakable things, but just things that they're never going to tell the world. If you meet someone with a 12th house Mars, they're not going to tell you everything about their inner world. They're going to keep some secrets, and I think that's a good thing. These people are also, unfortunately, apt to have sleep disruptions and nightmares, and they can't also just ignore the nightmares because they do tell them important things about their subconscious, so these people should definitely be keeping a dream journal. If you have this placement, it's really important that you meditate, you have solitude, you spend time alone, because if you have a 12th house Mars, you need quiet time and the world is very noisy. This is a great placement to go on silent retreats, to have deep conversations with strangers. Moving on to Mars in Taurus. I am using Gabby Windy as an example for this one because she has Mars in Taurus and I already gave her a shout out, but I love her. And I think that this is really interesting. So Gabby is an Aries rising, and so she has Mars in the second house. So we've gone from Mars in domicile to Mars in detriment. Mars and Taurus people are able to pace themselves. They can direct their steady energy toward creating beauty and material security. They're practical, determined, and stubborn, and it's really hard to deter them from getting the things that they want. They're gifted manifestors. They're able to materialize their dreams, and these dreams often involve luxuries and sensual pleasure, which are very Taurian, Venusian things. They're very strongly oriented towards relationships, and they can often become very possessive of their lovers. These people tend to be physically fit themselves. That's something that they value. The only thing that they have to worry about is becoming too stubborn in their arguments. You know, Taurus is the bull. Most of the time, the bull is just in the pasture. It's in one place. He's just hanging out. He doesn't really know too much of what's going on, just chilling. And then if someone makes him really angry, if a fighter comes out and waves a red flag for him over and over and like makes him really pissed off, then he's going to release all of that pent up energy. So Taurus Mars, it's detriment because they don't like to fight, but when they need to fight, they will. But speaking of how they fight mostly by withholding. So these people, they know what they have to offer. It's a little bit similar to Capricorn Mars. They know what they have to offer, but they will make it very scarce. They will be like, I don't know. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it. They withhold to the point where they try to make you beg. They want to get you in a position where they have the power because they have the talents, they have the things that you want, and you have to beg them for them to give it to you. And so the way you can win in this fight is to not beg. All you need to do is remain steadfast in who you are and what you have and not needing what they have. And then you can win because eventually they'll be like, okay, just kidding. I do like you. Like, we can hang out. It's not the end of the world. And then you can live together and be peaceful and happy forever. Now, Gabby has Mars in the second house, which is the house of money and value and resources and how you use them. And Mars does not like to be here because it is the natural house of Taurus, and Mars doesn't do well in Taurus. So people who have a second house Mars can be physically aggressive and dominant. It's very important for these people to exercise to get out some of that energy. They know what they want and they're going to get it regardless of social convention. They don't see roadblocks. They don't really care who they step on. They only see the path. However, because here it is placed in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, these people actually do care what people think about them. So they can't do that like Mars in the second house thing where they step on everyone and don't give a fuck about it. I just think that this is interesting because Gabby's mentioned on her podcast that she has struggled in the past with like paying her bills, and she's done somewhat unorthodox things to be able to do that, like taking money out of a 401k before being retirement age. And that's one of those things that's like socially unconventional. Like people are like, oh my God, you can't do that. It's illegal. But it's like, it's not. That's your money. You've worked for it. It's there. Yes, it's for retirement, but like if you run out of money and you need it, you can take it out. I've done it before. And I wish that people would talk about this more because money is such a place of shame in a capitalistic society. And it's like, it's literally not your fault that we live in capitalism. Like, it's not your fault that your bills are so high. It's not your fault that like employers drain you of all of your worth and only pay you a few cents. Like, do whatever you need to do. And that's sort of the energy of second house Mars. But Gabby's Mars also makes a trine to this Saturn-Venus conjunction that she has in the 10th house. And the 10th house is all about your fame and reputation. And trine is a very helpful aspect. So it's so interesting to me that her 10th house of fame ties into her Mars in the second house of money, because she has made money from, I'm sure, being on The Bachelor and Bachelorette and getting sponsorships. And also she made like a little over $50,000 on The Traders very recently. So it's just like, it's saying fame will help you make money. And so congratulations. I wish that upon myself and all of us as well. Someone else who has Mars in Taurus is Kanye West. Kanye is a Cancer rising. He was born on June 8th, 1977 in Atlanta, Georgia. And this is his chart. And doesn't it look fucking ugly? So all of the same things about Mars being in Taurus, but his Mars is in the 11th house because he's a Cancer rising. So 11th house Mars are people who, when they were younger, hopefully just when they were younger, had like very mean girls energy. Like they would get into friend groups just to be able to differentiate themselves and become the leader of the friend group and be like, where's my stage? Like they don't actually care about the friend groups. They just use the friend groups as a platform for greatness. And most people grow out of this after high school, after college, and people with 11th house Marses, as they get older and they evolve more and more, tend to find themselves surrounded by very inspiring people, and they're okay sharing the spotlight with people, and they just are very driven to ascend to higher and higher circles with cooler and cooler people and just have a lot of cool friends. Kanye is not one of those people. I do believe that he's still stuck in the high school mean girls phase of his life. Something interesting about Kanye that I think is very 11th house Martian is his obsession with dressing his love interests like they're dolls. Like Kim Kardashian and Julia Fox have both talked about how Kanye just like took them into rooms with tons of clothes and was like, I will dress you. I'm going to pick out what you're going to wear. Because people with 11th house Marses can't find their identity by themselves. They need to define their identity through other people. So by him dressing and controlling and, making sure that the people he's with look good or look the way he wants them to, I don't know if we could always call his taste good, he's able to control his identity and his image. If you have an 11th house Mars and you don't want to be like Kanye West, a really healthy way to deal with this placement is to play sports with your friends, to have game nights with your friends, to go work out with your friends. There are ways to have competition within your friend groups that are healthy and not like backstabbing. And like I mentioned, the best way to win a fight with a Mars and Taurus person is to not react. So when Kanye goes on these Twitter screeds where he's being racist and anti-Semitic and being like, I love Hitler, and people react to them, that's exactly what he wants. You're emboldening him. But then Galinda emboldened him. And yeah, so you should just not react. When we don't pay attention to him, he loses all of his power. He's literally built this whole life on the people that he surrounds himself with. But if he's alone, he doesn't know who he is. And if people aren't reacting to him, then he's got no fight to give. So the best way to get around the Kanye Wests of the world is to stop. But also, if you want to start a cult, find someone who has Mars in the 11th house. I think that would be probably a good idea until it's not. For Gemini Mars, we have Charli XCX. She is a Cancer rising. She was born on August 2nd, 1992. And her Mars, similar to Kacey Musgraves, is also in her 12th house. People who have Mars in Gemini are very witty and clever, which comes through very clearly in Charli's songwriting. They are compelling writers and speakers and singers. These people also can speak very quickly, which is a perfect descriptor for Charli, who speaks very fast in her songs. And they can be overthinkers, which causes anxiety. And I think this comes through really clearly in several songs on Brat, honestly, but specifically in the song I Think About It All the Time, where she's like weighing the importance of her career and the meaning of her career to her life versus like having a child. She's saying, I think about it all the time. Also in Brat, she thinks about her eating disorder. People who have Gemini Mars win their fights by making them a battle of the wits. If you're having an argument about something, they will make sure that it stops being an argument about that thing and becomes an argument about the argument. So they can take it away from the actual material of what you're fighting about and make it, how you're presenting your points, what words you're using, etc. And then once they get it to this level, like once it's not even about the thing it's supposed to be about anymore, they're going to win because no one can outwit a Gemini Mars. The only way that you're going to win a battle against a Gemini Mars is to keep bringing it back to what the fight is actually about, because if you let them take it where they want to take it, they're going to win. We already covered 12th house Mars in the Kacey Musgraves example, but similar to Kacey, it's highly likely that there's a huge part of Charli that she keeps hidden behind the scenes, including her anger. She's also likely to experience nightmares and can overcome these detriments by journaling, meditating, solitude, deep conversations with strangers, silence, etc. Moving on to Cancer Mars. As an astrologer, it's sort of like, oh, there's no good or bad placements, but Cancer Mars are just generally having planets in exile in fall is not a good thing to have. There are ways that you can mitigate these factors. Kendrick Lamar has Mars in Cancer and he's fabulous. It's not like the end of the world. Also, I do like Lana Del Rey, so it just must be hard for her. Lana Del Rey was born on June 21st, 1985 in New York City, and she has a 9th house Cancer Mars. Mars in Cancer is all about the family. It's the natural sign of the 4th house. And Mars in Cancer is all about protecting your family. But Mars in Cancer is sort of like, I need to protect my family from harm. I'm going to achieve this by giving every one of them a gun, even the children. I'm giving the kids guns and it'll be fine. And it's like, I don't know if that's the best way to protect your family necessarily. Mars in Cancer in terms of the US is a lot about immigration, which is why we've had all of this discourse and stuff going on, and literally ICE posting like ASMR deportations, which is absolutely insane. But yeah, Cancer is the crab. The crab represents Cancer because Cancers have their hard shell and they're able to go inside of it, but they're also like weirdly aggressive for being small little creatures. And Cancer Mars is like giving a crab a knife. What could go wrong? These people are super intuitive. Cancer is a water sign, and they win fights by making you be scared. My ex-boyfriend had Mars in Cancer, and he was a doomsday prepper. And he won all of our arguments by, first of all, weaponizing my own insecurities against me, and B, making me scared. If you leave me, you're gonna die. Not in those exact words, but that was basically the gist of what he was saying. People with Mars in Cancer are super intuitive, and they can identify your fears and your insecurities, and they will use them against you. They make you scared in order to get the upper hand over you. And they also like trap you in this spiral because they're also really scared too. And so you just get in like a downward fear spiral, and nothing good can happen once that happens. So first of all, never tell someone with Cancer and Mars your insecurities. This is literally why it's so important to do a birth chart for every single person you ever come across. Because if they have Mars in Cancer, you can't be trauma dumping. You can't be telling them what you're scared, or you can tell them, but you should lie. You should be like, I'm actually really scared that I never have anything to talk about. That would be me. I would be like, yeah, I fear that people think I don't talk enough. And then they could weaponize that against me, but it's not a real insecurity of mine. So guess what? I win. That's how you win a fight with the Cancer Mars. Mars in the 9th house are people who fight for what they believe in, for their ideas and what they stand for. And they will not stand for people who fight back. They will not stand for people who say, actually, your values are awful. They will literally become like the three-headed Hydra and be like, absolutely not. And then they'll start like attacking you. So they will always think that they're morally superior. They will always think that they're right and that you are wrong. And they have absolutely no qualms about telling you that you're wrong. But if you tell them that they're wrong, that's when we have a problem. This is because their beliefs and their values are like so integral to their identity that if you start to attack them, if they admitted that they were wrong, then they wouldn't know who they were at all in any sort of way. This is where Lana, I think, gets into trouble with like dating Trump supporters. Is she married to that guy, actually? That's crazy. But, you know, she will go to the ends of the earth to defend her right to date someone, to marry someone who hates women. Because that's her man. And she believes that it's okay to date him. And she is always right. I love Lana Del Rey. I'm just saying, I don't like the people that she dates. But a word to describe these people is self-righteous or like dogmatic. Moving on to Leo Mars with a wonderful example, our queen, Megan Thee Stallion. She's a Taurus rising, just like Kacey Musgraves. She was born on February 15th, 1995 in San Antonio, Texas. She has Mars in Leo in the 4th house. People with Mars in Leo are magnetic and also sometimes dramatic. They're playful and loyal and affectionate lovers, and they require ample attention, but lavish their partner with warmth and attention in return. They're visionaries, they have big dreams, they're often drawn to creative pursuits, and they love to perform, very fitting for our queen, Megan Thee Stallion. They're self-sufficient, and they can make excellent leaders if they can keep their egos and propensity for theatrics, jealousy, and overreaction in check. People with Mars and Leo win fights through social engineering. This is very, Alice Sparkly Cat uses this example, but it's very Blair Waldorf. Like, she will never get in a fight with you directly. She's not going to fist fight you in the hallway at the Met or whatever. But like, she is going to go work all of her connections at school and find a way to take you down without ever having to lift a finger. Genuinely, do not pick a fight with these people unless you have really thick skin, I guess, or are not a people pleaser at all. And I simply cannot relate to this. I will not be fighting with anyone who has Mars and Leo. The 4th house is another place that Mars does not like to be. It's the natural house of Cancer, where Mars is in fall. People with Mars in the fourth house usually had either turbulent family experiences growing up or they moved around a lot. At best, this can be someone who grew up in a household full of athletes, and at worst, it can be someone who was fighting with members of their family all the time. But it can also be someone who just moved around a lot. Mars is quick and it's action, so Mars never involves staying in one place for a long time. These people can also just be people who feel restless when they stay in one place for a long time. And a lot of these people, when they grow up, either choose to remain single, these people love to live alone, or if they choose to be in a relationship, they might have an arrangement where it's like living apart together or maintaining separate residences or at least separate bedrooms. Because they had such a turbulent childhood home experience, they want to have some stability and some solitude when they're older. How this shows up in Megan's life specifically is that her dad was actually in jail for the first 8 years of her life. When she was like very shortly after she was born, she and her mom moved from San Antonio to Houston. When she was 8, her dad got out of jail and they actually formed a really close relationship. And then very sadly, he passed away when she was 14. So she and her mom moved again to Pearland, Texas. And then her mom and grandma sadly also passed away in 2019, and she's an only child. So definitely a turbulent upbringing, something that can certainly cause a lot of wounds. Her mom was also a rapper. Her name was Holly, and her stage name was Hollywood. And her mom set some limits on Megan. She was like, you can't, pursue a career in rapping until you turn 21. And she would say that Megan's lyrics were too sexually explicit for her age. I don't think this is a bad thing. I think, especially since her mom knew the industry, she was just trying to protect her. But, there is definitely some turbulence between Megan and her mom about, Megan wanting to pursue her dreams and her mom trying to be like, hey, sure, but wait, or like tone it down a little because you're so young, which can be really hard to swallow when you're young and you think you know everything. If you have Mars in the fourth house, you could make a great real estate agent, or you could be someone who fights to help keep families together. Those are potential careers for all of my fourth house Mars people out there. Moving on to Mars in Virgo, we have the only Ben Affleck, who was born on August 15th, 1972 in Berkeley, California. He is a Cancer rising. Ben has Mars in the third house of Virgo, and he actually has it at 0 degrees. And I am going to do a deep dive on Ben and JLo's relationship soon because 1, he has a very interesting birth chart. 2, he's with a Leo rising, and they should have their own thing in the DSM-5. And 3, him and JLo have some of the craziest past life synastry I've ever seen. So coming up soon, we're going to talk about Ben Affleck and JLo. But in general, people with Virgo Mars are hard workers who devote themselves to projects and people with integrity, loyalty, and attention to detail. Their energies are practical and they make great doctors, healers, and social workers. They are oriented to health and are always ready to be of service to others. They are detail-oriented and persistent and are able to accomplish their goals using these talents. They just need to be wary of getting stuck in the hamster wheel of perfection. Physical activity, meditation, and developing their imagination will help with this. Virgo Mars is going to fight with you by reading you to filth. Virgo is a sign that's very detail-oriented and also very critical. And if there's something about yourself that you don't like, Virgos are so intuitive and perceptive, they will pick up on it immediately. They will read you the riot act. They will read you to filth in ways that you have never been read before. They will literally make you go into hiding, go into witness protection. The best way to win a fight with a Virgo Mars is to not fight with a Virgo Mars, but the second best way is just to not try to match them. These people they're very critical of you, but they're also probably very critical of themselves. So I think if you just stand strong in who you are and you own whatever they say about you, that's sort of all they have. They're not going to be physically aggressive or anything. So have a thick skin, or don't engage at all. Personally, I would be running the opposite direction at as fast as I can run, which is probably 4 miles an hour, but we're getting out of there. Now I'm curious about how fast I can run. Probably 6 miles an hour. It's not much better. Mars in the third house has a lot of similarities with Gemini Mars because the third house is the natural house of Gemini. It's funny to compare this with our Gemini Mars example, Charlie, because It's like, oh, you can be absolutely incredible at talking shit if you're a rapper or if you're from Boston. Like, those are the two options, and Ben Affleck happens to be the latter. These people are argumentative and they are always trying to prove a point. They're the kind of people who gain joy from like throwing a bomb into a conversation, even among close friends, and just watching it go off and seeing the fallout. Like, they love mess and they love to cause that mess specifically. But if you do the same thing to them, they will hate you forever. Their communication can be direct and even harsh. Once again, Mars is a knife, so they're like very cutting with their words. The third house also represents like the neighborhood, and these people know everyone's business. Like, these are the busybodies of the zodiac. They are everywhere. They're at the bodega on the corner, and they're down the street, like helping out with chores and getting some gossip, and they're talking to the neighbors, and they're getting all of the tea. Like, they are up in everyone's business. This placement also has like ADHD vibes. It's people who have a hard time finishing projects that they start. Something I've noticed as I've been going through these chart examples is that a lot of these celebrities have aspects between their Mars and Neptune. For example, Ben has Mars square Neptune in Sagittarius. And so these are people, and I think this is like a necessary skill of being a celebrity, honestly, but being good at lying. Neptune is illusions and deceit. Mars is action. So, you know, go and tell a lie. And this is like necessary to be a celebrity because these people do need to have some sort of separation between their public and their private persona in order to maintain their sanity, I believe. And so being able to tell lies about like what's going on with that you at home and people not being able to discern that those are lies is a really important skill. And I think that's what all of these Mars Neptune contacts are really representing. Moving on to Libra Mars, where we again have two examples just because I wanted to be able to touch on all of the houses. My first example is Whitney Houston. I love to use Whitney Houston as an example because, one, she's the greatest vocalist literally ever. I'm constantly watching videos of Whitney and her technique and her performance and using them to make my own singing better. Absolutely the queen of the world. Two, because we actually have a lot of chart placements in common. So analyzing her chart, I'm sort of like learning more about mine as well. And three, because Whitney Houston was a closeted lesbian. And her long-term partner, Robin Crawford, her best friend, Robin Crawford, has stated that she thinks if Whitney was able to be out of the closet and didn't have to be married to Bobby Brown and deal with all of the abuse at his hands, she would be alive today, which is really, really depressing. I just love lesbians. Whitney Houston was born on August 9th, 1963 at 8:55 p.m. in Newark, New Jersey. And she has Mars in Libra, which, if you will remember, is Mars in detriment because it is the opposite sign of Aries, where Mars is at home. Libra and Taurus, the two signs where Mars is in detriment, are both ruled by Venus. Mars and Venus don't really get along. Venus cares a lot about what people think about it. It cares about social norms and rules and expectations, and that's why Mars doesn't do well there, because Mars is like, I don't give a fuck. Mars is like, I'm going to do what I want. I don't care who I hurt. I don't care who I step on. I'm getting what I want. And Venus is like, but harmony, but peace. And so then we have a problem. Libra Mars is a sign that tests the waters. Libra Mars is perfectly capable of starting small conflicts, but almost never wants to address the actual issue at the core of things. People with Mars in Libra are capable of holding onto their anger forever. They are people who their anger is very potent because they have a lot of it, because we just store it up inside of ourselves. It's all there. It's just beneath the surface, but we don't let on, you know? Unless you make us angry, we're never going to show how much pent-up rage we have sitting in our solar plexus. I think that's where I keep my rage. And so having a lot of rage is actually very powerful. I think one day I might snap, and I think that is the day that the patriarchy will end. So looking forward to that one. People with Mars in Libra fight by dodging. These people just simply do not take accountability or blame. They actually might even feign defeat and like be like, oh, you got me, but they'll never believe that you got them. That's not true. They're just like trying not to fight with you anymore because they really hate confrontation. This strategy works really well at making the other person overreact first so that they can paint them to be the bad guy and run away and accept no blame on their own. I've been guilty. Is it wrong? Am I wrong? Is it just my nature? It's just in my birth chart. Mars and Libra girls, get behind me. Sabrina Carpenter, get behind me. Whitney, my Pisces rising queen, has Mars in the 8th house, just like Sabrina Carpenter. And Mars likes to be in the 8th house because it's the natural house of Scorpio. People with Mars in the 8th house are stealthy and sneaky, and they do a lot of things behind the scenes, and they keep a lot of secrets. This aligns perfectly with a woman who was a closeted lesbian who had to keep an entire side of herself, a huge side of herself, and an entire relationship under wraps and pretend it was just her friend and, keep people from knowing the truth. These people like to do things by themselves because they had to learn to do things by themselves. As opposed to Mars in the 12th house, where their subconscious holds on to all the times that people let them down and seethes about it. These people are just okay, yeah, I had to learn how to do this by myself, so I want to do things by myself going forward. They're not angry about it. They're just very capable. The 8th house also has to deal with other people's money. And so people with 8th house Mars are always looking at other people's bags. They're what did you do to get that? How do I get that? And so they do give off a little bit of con artist energy between this and the keeping secrets. Even if they're not, they will just seem like sneaky people, even if they have absolutely no bad intentions. They're just a little interested in how you made that money. These people would make fantastic private investigators, documentarians, and psychologists because they're super intuitive and they really pick up on things that other people don't see. They're great in crisis situations because they've been in crisis situations and they've had to learn how to get out and figure out a way to stop them by themselves. I also want to point out another aspect. Just like I said that a lot of the celebrities have Mars-Neptune contacts, a lot of the celebrities I've looked at have Mars-Venus contacts. In this case, Whitney has Mars in Libra, sextiling her Venus in Leo. And Mars and Venus don't get along, but people who have Mars and Venus contacts in their chart, whether that's helpful, a trine or a sextile, or even a harder aspect like an opposition or a square, have a magnetism about them. They have a chemistry and a charisma and a magnetism. It's something about being able to balance that, the masculine aspect of Mars and the feminine aspect of Venus just gives them a little je ne sais quoi that makes them stand out as stars. My second Libra Mars example is Miss Kylie Jenner, who was born on August 10th, 1997 at 5:31 p.m. in Los Angeles, California. Kylie Jenner is a Capricorn rising because she is a boss babe. Since Kylie's a Capricorn rising, Mars is really important in her chart because even though her chart ruler is Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, Mars is exalted in her home sign. So anything her Mars does, and her Mars is in detriment, so her Mars isn't doing super well, does impact her chart as a whole and her life as a whole. The 10th house is also somewhere that Mars likes to be because it's the natural house of Capricorn. So people with 10th house Mars could have had a lot of fights with teachers and their fathers growing up. Mars is male figures. And then that could translate to having fights with their bosses as adults. But when they're not fighting their bosses, they're becoming their bosses because these people, Mars in the 10th house, they get to the top. These are the CEOs. These are the people who will always get that promotion. And people will be but I deserve the promotion. I'm sorry, girl. You were up against a 10th house Mars and they're going to win every single time. They need to be the CEOs. They literally cannot stand being subordinate to people. They have to get up there. They need to be leaders. They need to run their own company, which Kylie has done with Kylie Cosmetics and her self-made empire, whatever. People with 10th house Mars, their career and status and how the world sees them is their primary motivation. This is a little bit toned down in Kylie's case, actually, because her Mars is in a Venus-ruled sign. So she does care about how people see her. But I also just don't think that Kylie Jenner ever had a chance to be normal. She's the youngest Kardashian Jenner. Was born as a child star. She literally never even had a chance. She's had so many narcissists in her family, which causes so much people pleasing tendencies. I think that she's done the best with what she was dealt that she could, because clearly it's something that isn't easy for her, but she stays in her bag anyway. I don't know. I'm not defending Kylie Jenner. I just don't think that she's the villain in the story. But you can also see that this is an insecurity for Kylie because if you look at her chart, her Mars is very closely conjunct her midheaven, which is the highest point in your chart. It is that's your spot of reputation, which just adds even more to these 10th house significations of Mars. But it's also conjunct exactly her Chiron, and Chiron is the wounded healer. This is the part of your chart where you're really insecure. It's the deepest wound you have that you need to learn to heal over the course of your lifetime. So her deepest wound is her ambition, like getting to the top and being on all these lists of billionaires and most frequent private jet usage. So she needs to work hard in this lifetime to heal her wound around being ambitious and around being on top. Moving on to Scorpio Mars, we have Sydney Sweeney, who is a Scorpio rising. So Mars is in her first house. Sydney Sweeney was born on September 12th, 1997 at 12:42 p.m. in Spokane, Washington. So we are back with Mars in domicile. And since Sydney Sweeney is a Scorpio rising, Mars is actually her chart ruler. So the placement of her Mars and just the impacts and aspects to her Mars are very important in every area of her life. Since her Mars is in domicile, it works very well and positively impacts her drive for action and her life. The difference between Mars in Aries and Mars in Scorpio, it's at home in both of them, but Mars in Aries is sort of like a machine gun, and Mars in Scorpio is like a sniper rifle. I think Chris Brennan said that, but I think he got the analogy from somewhere else. People who have Scorpio Mars are strong-willed, self-reliant, and highly disciplined with lots of emotional, physical, and intellectual energy. When they decide to do something, nothing is going to stand in their way. They're prone to jealousy, controlling behavior, and resentment. They're very magnetic, and they do well with the public. They have ample imagination and creativity and make great artists and performers. They can also become gifted therapists, scientists, or healers. People who have Mars in Scorpio fight through power plays. If they go into a fight and they know they're the underdog, they're not even going to fight it. They will wait. They hold on to their rage, very similar to Libra Mars. They hold on to their grudges. They bury hatchets, so they keep maps where they put them. And then they wait until they're rich and famous and powerful. This is like everyone's like 5-step plan ever. And then they ruin the life of the person who they wanted to fight back then, but they weren't in the power position to do it back then. So if you're fighting with a Scorpio Mars, they wouldn't have even started fighting you if they didn't know that they would win. So good luck. Sydney Sweeney herself has very Martian energy, actually, because she grew up she said she did every sport she was able to where she lived. She grew up in Idaho, including soccer, baseball, snow, slalom, skiing, and wakeboarding. And interesting, first house rules your appearance. And so she was in a wakeboarding accident when she was young that left her with a permanent scar next to her eye, which is very Mars in the first house. Your first house rules your appearance, Mars rules accidents, so it's pretty literal for her first house Mars in domicile placement. She was also on the robotics team and in the math club in middle school, which are two very like scorpionic, like understanding what lies beneath and like all of the little details sort of activities for her to be doing. The medical astrology signification of Mars is inflammation. Mars is, very red and hot, and that translates medically to like anger and inflammation. And so my chart ruler is Jupiter. I'm a Pisces rising. My Jupiter is in my 8th house Libra conjunct my Mars. And so Jupiter rules my appearance, rules my face. Mars is inflammation. I have always had acne. I've always struggled with acne. And that, I think, it's because of my Mars contact with my Jupiter. Like Jupiter is my appearance, but because that Mars is right there on it, I'm always going to have inflammation in how I appear, which translates into acne. So it's just the stars. And who am I to fight what the fates have in store for me? The first house is somewhere that Mars loves to be because it's the natural house of Aries. These people are able to fight for themselves both physically and verbally. They are naturally argumentative and can come off as irritable and aggressive. And because of this, people also project their own anger and aggression onto these people because they're a very easy mirror. They're very powerful, and people tend not to like this about them. People challenge them, and these people need to challenge themselves to lean away from these challenges, to step into their power, to, remember how powerful they are and not be reactive to these petty challenges, because you're never gonna win if you're just getting in fights with people every time they challenge you, because all of their challenges, most of their challenges at least, are just them projecting their own anger and aggression onto you. Like it's really not about you, and you need to step back and acknowledge that, or else you're going to be like stepping on landmines your whole entire life. Sydney's Mars is interesting because it actually makes a sextile to this crazy conjunction. She has Lilith conjunct Sun, conjunct her midheaven, and conjunct her North Node in her 11th house Virgo, which seems like hell. I'm so sorry, sister. And I definitely will do an episode about her birth chart just because I just want to dive into it more. I've never seen anything like this before. Lilith is your dark feminine. The sun is like your identity and your destiny. Your midheaven is your reputation, and your north node is also like your destiny and what you're born to do. Hi, Nessie. And it's really just saying to me, like, her identity and her destiny is deeply tied into her dark feminine and her reputation, which sucks to say, but like, it's because she's a hot girl who has big boobs. Like, that's just where we are under the patriarchy. But I think that because she has so many planets at 0 degrees, I think that she's sort of here for that reason. Like, one of her purposes in this life is to make an example of that and to talk about it and to bring awareness to the fact that, you know, like I was talking about at the beginning with my own insecurities, I have no boobs and I still feel this way, that like she feels like people care more about her appearance than her work. And she spends so much time and energy like being a really good actor. And, you know, I think she produced that horror movie that she did, Immaculate. You know, people still just want to talk about her boobs. They still just want to talk about how her bathing suit didn't fit right in Anyone But You with Glenn Powell. And it sucks. God, being a woman is such a curse. I love being a woman, but it's just like, you can do anything. You could literally like go to the moon. You could go to Mars, and you could be the first woman to ever solve the math problem that's never been solved before. That was in the news recently. 2 women solved the problem, and like literally no one gives a fuck. They're like, but they're not hot. And men aren't hot. Do you think any of the men in power right now are hot? Because, whew, I don't even know, girl. I don't even know. Anyway, Sagittarius Mars. Our Sagittarius Mars example is Miss Gracie Abrams, who was born on September 7th, 1999 at 11:25 a.m. in Los Angeles, California, to one J.J. Abrams, the creator of the show Fringe, which I'm actually binge watching right now, which is really good. She is a Scorpio rising, so Mars is also her chart ruler. People with Mars in Sagittarius are athletic and enthusiastic, but these people can lack practicality. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is Zeus. You know, Jupiter is like, doesn't have to follow the rules because he's a god. And so it's like, what do you mean I can't do that? Jupiter sees the hoops that other people, you know, go through and is like, I simply don't think that I want to do that. And so they don't. So people with Mars in Sagittarius can lack a lot of practicality because they think that they can do anything. And it's like, there are the laws of physics. Those do still exist. These people are drawn to travel and adventure, and they can become reckless and impulsive. They will fight for their beliefs, and they're very often like cheerful and optimistic and inspirational to others. They're drawn to spirituality, and they do well with body, mind, wisdom practices like yoga and Tai Chi. They need freedom, adventure, and joy, and they need sexual variation to be happy in a relationship with one person. When you're in a fight with a Sagittarius Mars, you're in a fight with a gaslighter. Sagittarius cares about being morally superior more than anything else. This is very similar to a 9th house Mars because the 9th house is the natural house of Sagittarius. So these people will address your grievances by telling you to look at the bigger picture. They'll be like, you just don't see the bigger picture and I see the bigger picture. And then you'll be like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they're just like, you just don't understand. Like, I am morally correct. And you don't see that because you just don't understand. And then you'll be fighting with a wall, basically. So in order to get out of a fight with these people, just let them think that they're right, because they will like literally never let you go until you tell them that like they're right and they're okay and their beliefs are fine and everything's fine. Gracie has Mars in the 2nd house, which we covered with our Gabby Windy example, but I think it's so interesting for her because Gracie, unlike Gabby, is a Nepo baby. Her dad, obviously J.J. Abrams, wealthy, powerful, influential. She's never had to want for money. She will never have to want for money. But this is telling me that she is really passionate about making her own way. She never talks about her dad. She never invokes him. You know, she, I think, has tried to say that she's not a Nepo baby because her dad's not in music, but whatever. But she just really wants to make her own money and be self-sufficient to achieve her own success through her own talents instead of riding on her dad's coattails. I have a lot more I can say about Gracie's Mars being conjunct her Pluto and her probably being a lesbian. But I don't know if this is the right time or place for that. But future episode, we'll talk about Gracie and Taylor and all of the closeted musicians in Hollywood coming out sometime soon, hopefully. Moving on to Capricorn Mars, Timothée Chalamet. What are you doing here? He's a Virgo rising. He was born on December 27th, 1995 at 9:16 p.m. in Manhattan, New York. Timothée Chalamet, our guy with the exalted Mars, what a lucky little duck. In his fifth house of creativity, that's an actor. People who have Mars in Capricorn are deliberate in their study and accomplishing their goals, though they sometimes lack in emotional energy. They have incredible restraint, so they're able to accomplish a lot in terms of career and recognition and ambition. They just need to watch out for becoming workaholics or being overly cautious. Their public demeanor is often overly stiff, and they need to learn that emotional expression can exist alongside dignity and respectability. They possess excellent timing because Saturn rules timing, Saturn Chronos, and they can become talented comedians and musicians for this reason because those things are all about timing. Mars in Capricorn knows their worth, and they fight by cutting you off so that you really can understand like what they meant to you and what they mean to you and what they offer you. Like, these are people who, if you start taking them for granted, they will just stop talking to you. They'll be like, yeah, you're taking me for granted, but look what I brought you. You're going to know now because you're not going to get it anymore. The more that they want something, the more they create an illusion that they don't want it, so that the people who have those things and can offer those things to them, like, seek them out because they're like, oh, you're not showing any interest in this thing, but I want you to want it. And they're like, haha, my plan worked all along. I really wanted this thing and I didn't have to do anything. It came straight to me. They set extremely firm boundaries in terms of their communication. They will not be available to you at all times. And so when you fight with them, you're not going to get an answer right away. So only pick a fight with the Mars in Capricorn if you have excellent patience and you're also very good at exercising restraint. Mars likes to be in the fifth house. The sun rules the fifth house, and Mars and the sun are both hot. And so the archetype of this placement is the warrior, the person who is going to do things their way and who doesn't care what other people think. These people love to experiment with self-expression and changing their look. Their identity comes from creativity, which makes a lot of sense for Timothée Chalamet as a man who is an actor. People with this placement thrive in creative and active roles. And so in addition to being an actor, you can find them being aerialists or dancers or gymnasts. This can be a difficult placement in general in terms of dating life because the fifth house rules sexuality and dating. Mars is fast and Mars is aggressive. So, you know, people can be like womanizers. They can have a lot of short relationships that don't really pan out. But the structure of Mars in Capricorn may help to offset this. So Mars in the fifth house in Capricorn might be a little bit easier and like less hectic of a dating life. He has been dating Kylie for a while, if they're even dating. But we are talking about Timothée Chalamet, like the Timothée Chalamet who spread chlamydia at NYU. Like, he had to be going through them like that in order to cause this epidemic. Fifth house Mars. Our second to last example, and it's Drake. I've been waiting for this one. Drake has Mars in Aquarius in seventh house. He's a Leo rising. Once again, they need their own thing in the DSM-5. And he was born on October 24th, 1986, 2:31 a.m., Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I laughed my ass off when I saw that Drake has Mars in the seventh house because he is the most seventh house Mars person I've ever seen in my whole entire life. So interesting. The seventh house is one of Mars's least favorite places to be, by the way, because it's the natural house of Libra, and Libra is ruled by Venus, and Mars doesn't get along with Venus, blah, blah, blah. We've heard it all before. But people with Mars in Aquarius are drawn to ideas. It's an air sign. It's so detached. It's so intellectual. So they prefer to exert their energy the drive of Mars towards intellectual endeavors. They push boundaries. They're not afraid to argue their points with creative, eccentric, and distinctive styles. For example, a series of diss tracks culminating in your own demise. They are stubborn and non-traditional and rarely like to see from other points of view. Sexually, they will make their own rules and enjoy having the freedom to bend the constraints of what is considered normal and acceptable, even when that leads to multiple crowds of A-list celebrities singing out that you like minors over and over and over again. These people can become much more stable partners and drop their obstinacy and impatience when they find a mate whose mind and perspective they respect. And these people are going to fight with you by being detached from the situation. They're going to be like, you're so emotional, I don't even care. They're like so above it all. They're a third party. They're an observer. They're just there. You know, they're not invested in this fight because it's so below them. And it's so weird that you're so emotionally connected to it. Why are you being like that? But good news, they become like so emotionally constipated from repressing all their emotions. So like eventually they will blow up and like lose it. You just, you know, have to be like, okay, bye, and walk away. And then they'll be like, ugh, I don't get the satisfaction of winning. And now I have all these repressed emotions that I've never faced in my whole entire life because I'm an Aquarius. And then you win. People who have Mars in the 7th house fight for others more than they fight for themselves, even and especially when those people do not want to be fought for. Rihanna, SZA, Serena Williams, Millie Bobby Brown, just a subset of women that Drake has fought for who really didn't want him to even text them. Like they wanted him to lose their number and he's like, these are my women. It's very like Helen of Troy. Like, they're like, I want Helen of Troy. I'm going to war for her. And it's like, are you going to war for, did she ask you to go to war? Or are you going to war over her? Like, I think you're going to war over her. She doesn't want you. She doesn't want to be here. She doesn't want to be with you. She doesn't want anything to do with any of this. She is probably a lesbian. These people always feel like they need to prove a point and often get in fights with people that they're in relationships with. They have a hard time cultivating an identity on their own, which is very similar to 11th house Mars placements, and they need to define themselves through the people that they're in a relationship with. The difference between the 7th house and the 11th house is the 11th house is like social groups. 7th house is one-on-one relationships. So people with 11th house Mars define their identity through their friend groups. People with 7th house Mars define their identity through the one person that they're in a romantic relationship with or in a business partnership with. The evolved side of this placement is someone who always wants to make sure everything is fair and just, but has to realize that other people in the world like just don't operate that way. It's sort of like being neurodivergent and being like, not everyone is obsessed with fairness and equality. That's crazy. And to use this placement constructively, these people would be great activists. Find someone who wants or needs to be fought for, a community who has a need for, you know, a certain type of profession or more resources or something, and give those people what they actually want. Like, don't just pick someone and be like, I'm fighting for you. And they're like, just please don't do that. And then you still continue to do it because of your own ego or whatever. But when I tell you that Leo risings are not to be fucked with, like in a way, like not like don't pick a fight with them, but like don't talk to them. It's because they have Scorpio in the 4th house. Behind their smile and charm, these people hide an emotional intensity that is hard for even them to understand. They have a great fear of being vulnerable with people, and they're afraid of feeling a need to be with someone because of their strong desire for independence and autonomy. Being open with people makes them feel insecure because they don't like the feeling that someone else knows more about them than they know about the other person. Deep down, they long for a committed, honest, and loyal and vulnerable relationship where they can be fully themselves and fully devoted, but they have a really hard time letting themselves get there. Good luck. All right, we're on to our final Mars placement. Last but not least, we have Miss Chappell Roan. She has Mars in Pisces, and she is a Libra rising. She was born on February 19th, 1998 in Willard, Missouri. People who have Mars in Pisces exert their energy primarily towards fantasy and emotion, and sometimes lack in practicality and physical energy. Pisces actually rules the feet, so these people often have do sports or have done sports that involve their feet. For example, soccer, or Chappell Roan herself was a track star in school. So that's very, cross country is very Pisces Mars. I love when astrology is literal like this. This placement is often a signature of artists, musicians, poets, and other creative types. These are sensitive souls who need a lot of alone time to rest, which lines up with a lot of the controversy last year over her canceling her set at the All Things Go festival. People were like, oh my gosh, she's not cut out for this career. She needs to rest. And then other people were like, celebrities are people too. They deserve to rest. And, you know, I love that for Chappell. They could never make me hate her. I'm sorry. I'm behind her forever. Pisces Mars are drawn to people who are gentle, spiritual, and compassionate. However, they do need to set clear boundaries or else they risk losing themselves in other people. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, and so it really goes from like Aries, which is the self, all the way through Pisces, which is then where you merge with like the universe. Pisces, you know, is limitless. That's why Jupiter rules Pisces, because Jupiter is expansion and abundance, and you can expand as much as you want in Pisces. But Pisces do run the risk of losing themselves into the abyss or merging too much with others or becoming others. Pisces Mars love to fight by playing the victim because it's instinctual. You know, they're like, people will never attack me if I am a damsel in distress. So they're very good at embodying that archetype, and they know that no one can win a fight with the ultimate victim. Like, people will feel bad for them and think that you're the bad guy if they paint themselves to be the victim. So if you are fighting with a Pisces Mars and they start playing the victim, you either need to get them out of that space and make them realize like what they've done and what they need to be accountable for, or you need to dip, because you're going to be painted to be the bad guy if you lose this fight real bad. The sixth house is the last house that we have to cover, and Mars actually finds its planetary joy in the sixth house. Each of the planets have a house where they find their joy. Mars is the sixth. The sixth house has to do with, personally, it's like self-care and health and wellness and your daily routine and chores, and externally, it's like workers. It's the day-to-day work people do. The 10th house is like your career and your reputation, but the sixth house is work that gets done every single day. People with Mars in the sixth house tend to be very clean and organized and particular about their self-care habits, but this can easily become obsessive and turn into like disordered eating and over-exercising and being way too regimented and obsessed with your routine. These people need to learn how to rest and to meditate, and it's crucial for them to take naps. They have a super strong intuition and are great leaders who can run circles around people at work, but they can struggle to follow projects all the way through to completion. I just thought that this was interesting for Chappell specifically because this year at the 2025 Grammys, she gave a speech, a very, very brave speech where she was literally shaking, and she called for record labels to provide healthcare to their artists. And that is so like Mars in the sixth house. It's like fighting for workers. Perfect chef's kiss. And she slayed with that one. All right, that is all the Mars signs and houses. I hope that this has offered you some insight on yourself and also how to fight with your ex-boyfriend who sucks. So I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I am really excited to be back, even though I've been in my hermit era. I think I'm ready to emerge. So catch me once again at Coachella. And if you see me, look at the booty because I've been working on it. Okay, I love you. Bye.